Now, due to a sharp rise in export revenue, Nigeria reported a trade surplus of 5.81 trillion naira in the third quarter of 2024. In comparison to the previous year, this represented a significant improvement in trade performance. The surplus, nevertheless, was less than the 6.95 trillion naira that was reported in 2024's second quarter. Now, as the Central Bank of Nigeria introduced the new electronic foreign exchange matching system this week, the naira broke significant resistance levels at the Nigerian autonomous foreign exchange market. On Monday last week, the Nigerian currency began trading at 1,663 naira to the dollar and ended Friday at 1,537 naira on the official market. The parallel market saw a rise in the naira's value, which peaked on Saturday morning and then settled at 1,580 naira to the dollar on Sunday. Now, our Rise business analyst, as always, Chika Mbonu, joins me to discuss this a bit further. Mr. Chika, good morning. It's great to see you. Very well. Thank you. Compliments of the season to you.
Same to you.
Great. All right. Well, let's begin with Nigeria recording 5.81 trillion naira trade surplus. Surely this marks a notable rise in our trade performance compared to last year, isn't it?
I mean, when this kind of figures are thrown about, I mean, when you push out that figure of 5.81 trillion trade surplus, it sounds, very good result, But what we normally do is to go behind the figures. What are the facts behind the figures to make sure that these figures, send some message. What message they're sending to us? Okay, just for our viewers, for every country, this focuses on the import or export of a country. The total merchandise, trade normally is when you add up the exports of a country with the imports. That gives the total. For Nigeria, for that Q3, it was a total of about 35.16 trillion. Greater than last year by 81%, which is commendable, which is salutary. Now, when it's segregated now into exports and then imports. Exports came to about 20.478 billion, which is about roughly 60% of this total. And again, more than 98% above the figure of last year, which is again commendable. But that's where the good story ends. For me, that's where the good story ends. And the next analysis I'm going to do is what the sum total of the problems we're having in our country. Now, the export, which I said grew more than 98% over last year, the sad thing is that crude oil is about 66% of this export. None of crude oil like LNG and whatever is another 22%. So when you have the oil and gas products, it's about 88%. Still, the same story with Nigeria, that our export is still triggered by oil and gas. So you would think that, something better is happening. Now, if you push down the analysis again and you look at, sadly, agric is only 4%. Agriculture, only 4% of this export. But remember that between agriculture and services, this oil and gas that is about 90% of our export is only less than 6% of our GDP. And agric that is almost the major part of our GDP is only 44% of our foreign exchange, export. So that tells you where we have in our country. The even worst, again, is solid minerals that we know that we have in this country is 1%. Again, worse again, manufactured goods. We cannot grow without exporting manufactured goods. It's just barely 1%. So oil and gas, almost 90% export. So while we commend the trade surplus of about 5.8 trillion, the story behind the figures is that nothing has changed for our country. We are still, solely depending on oil for foreign exchange exports. Now, if you look at imports again, tells again the sad story about Nigeria, in the sense that again imports were about 14.67 trillion, which grew more than about 63% more than last year. But the issue is this: listen to this. This import, 48% of it was manufactured goods. 50% of manufactured goods, those goods already manufactured into our country, imported, that I'm sure they have capabilities to do in our country. And that's where the bad news is. Raw material is the main token 11%. So if the raw material had been the major component of the import, maybe we would have, been less sad. But this one, you can see, manufactured goods again. So whereas we have trade surplus of about 5.8 trillion, which is commendable, above last year's figure, above Q, last year's 2023 figure. The issue is that the story behind the figure tells the sad commentary about Nigerian economy that was still, sucked in oil.
So
and all the effort to diversify the economy away from oil, non-oil exports barely exist, less than 12%, which is, just the same story we've had in Nigeria for decades now.
Well, it certainly is. I mean, you say very fancy numbers there and figures, but if one looks at it in relation to what you're saying, it's a bit of a Pyrrhic victory in terms of there is no substantial behavioral change in terms of what we see in our export potential. But what does this portend looking into the future? Do you see this continuing to be the case?
Yeah, but because we have several initiatives that have been put out there to support non-oil exports. But are they breaking the ground? So the major issue, I've said this several times in this place, is that the fundamental, disequilibrium in our economy is the fact that oil and gas contributes barely 5-6% of our GDP, but almost 90% of our export earnings. Agriculture and other ones contribute almost 90% of our GDP, but barely contribute to 5% of our distance. So the day we are able to turn our economy to reflect the equality between the output in GDP and the commensurate output in earnings in foreign exchange, our economy will be a little stabler.
Do you see that day coming soon?
Hopefully, because of the so many initiatives. And then I see this new Minister for Trade and Investment who is focused on things like this, and I hope that she will work very hard, as she's always done, to make sure the exporters are supported. Their problems are plenty, but I believe that most of these problems can actually be handled and resolved and make Nigeria a preferred location for exports.
All right, so a welcome spike in the trade surplus, but we have lots of work to do. Let's look next at the Naira gaining 126 Naira to the dollar in less than a week. I'm sure there's so much that we can learn from you on this one.
I've got so many calls from a lot of people, again, asking me what should they do with this last and so on and so forth. I just go back to what I always say, that the price of every commodity is determined by the demand and supply. Demand and supply. That whereas whenever you have supply that outstrips demand, more people are willing to bring dollars to sell. What you have, and this is a big issue. I'm starting from the big issue. You'll find that demand is tepid or weaker, and then people will be forced to bring down their prices. And that's what's happened. But the Nigerian FX market has been, there have been several initiatives, key initiatives or developments, especially from Central Bank in the last 2-3 weeks. On the sourcing side, first of all, Nigeria raised Euro bonds. They went to the market to raise $2.2 billion. And because we're still beautiful bright, we had takers for almost $9 billion, so we could only take about $2.2 billion. So there was some decent supply, even though it's borrowed money. But that $2.2 billion comes in to help our reserves and strengthen our reserves. So as on supply side, you have the positive in that respect. Now, the other thing also on supply-demand side was the Central Bank of Nigeria introduced a new way, a new system, the electronic foreign exchange matching system. The bill has a big name for our viewers. Basically, unlike before where things were done, you stay in your own bank and do things. Now there's a central platform anchored by Bloomberg where every bank, let me summarize it, comes there with a demand and supply of foreign exchange every day. Now, so the sense of that process is to ensure more transparency and get a fair price for the dollar. So instead of people having pockets of demands and supply everywhere, now everybody sees everything on the same platform. And that enables some transparency. And that has helped, to, moderate the demand and match it with the supply and ensure transparency in the market. I think that has helped. In addition to what supply I thought about, again, this season we also know, that's this in the call, our brothers and sisters abroad normally come in this season. And then usually we know that this season, the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a lot of people are coming with a foreign currency to come back home. Because of the exchange rates disparity between Naira and dollar, a lot of people couldn't come back home before now. Their hands will be filled with Naira, so a lot of people are encouraged to come home. So there have been a lot of people coming home this time. So we also think that supply is coming from that side Of course, that things that happen in the crypto market, that's also happening. But the bigger picture for me is also that what I've analyzed for you is when we have a near free market, that the price of a commodity is determined by the demand and supply. In Nigeria also, you find that because of the fast depreciation of our currency, the dollar became a asset protection currency for a lot of people. People, when they receive the salary, the next thing they do to go and buy dollar and hold. So I saw somebody lamenting that they bought dollar at 1,750, now it's come down, So a lot of people are holding dollar, and there's a lot of panic. The speculators, a lot of people are going to also come into the market, again, increasing supply. So at the end of the day, for me, it is how do you maintain supply?
Right. Well, it appears that everything is happening in a timely fashion. And as you mentioned, we've seen this foreign exchange matching system is also, transparency is what we need. I know we have so much we could discuss about this, but we have to wrap up. Arise business analyst Chika Mbonu, many thanks for joining us this morning.